Welcome back, Screenagers, to yet another episode of the Canon, your favorite movie podcast, the only movie podcast providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies ever made. My name is Raf. We've got another amazing movie for you today. We are still celebrating Spooktober here in the Wasteland, so we'll be discussing another classic within the horror genre. I'm joined by Screen Age Wasteland legends to talk to me about Scream and everything that makes it great. We've got Duke and we've got Ramona. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to the show. How's everyone? You guys feeling spooky yet or what? What's going on?
Oh yeah.
I've been feeling spooky since September. I'm ready.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I raked some leaves the other day, so you know it's that October feeling. So
There we go.
Yeah. Yard work.
yeah,
I love it.
the cold.
I love it.
Ramona, I picture you as someone who goes hard with Halloween decorations. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes. I actually don't go that crazy outdoors, mostly because we live in a cul-de-sac and no one's ever going to see it. But
Aw.
the inside of my house, yes, the mantle is set with a lot of skeletons and skulls and all my little nicky-nacky things all over the place. My husband just kind of has to humor me with it. He's not a big Halloween person. So,
Oh, wow.
but I know. He did offer for the first time in our 20 plus year relationship to watch some horror movies with me this October. He does not watch horror movies, but he said he
Okay.
would for me. So I'm very, very excited about this month to see what I can scare him with. So to speak.
Amazing. Was
Yeah.
Scream one of those movies?
You know, he's actually seen Scream. He worked at the movie theater when it opened. So he did see
Oh.
the first one, but I don't believe he's seen any of the others. I'm going to try and steer clear a bit from like slasher and gore and kind of get him more into the psychological paranormal kind of scary movies to try to ease
Okay.
him in first
Okay.
before I turn on the knives and the guts and stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to say which one is scarier because a slasher movie, something like Scream, or even what we spoke about last week, which Duke was on in Psycho, those are things that, like, in theory could kind of happen in real life, which
Mhm.
like kind of makes it scarier. But then for me, when you get into like the supernatural,
The
like
unknown.
like spiritual ghost stories, and you know weave in all the like Catholic imagery and stuff like that, that just scares
Yeah.
the bejesus out of me. Like The
Yep.
Exorcist would never happen, but to me that's way scarier than Scream.
I agree with you, actually. I find slashers more entertaining, kind of fun.
Mhm.
And I find the psychological horror, the supernatural, the ghosts, the poltergeists, whatever they are, the demonic, to me, that terrifies me to where I'm awake in the middle of the night looking at like
Yeah.
the lump of laundry on the chair that you think is like something staring at you.
Yeah.
I
The-
still do that. It's ridiculous.
Those are the
But those are
movies-
also my favorite movies. So
It's so hard. You have to watch them in the morning. That's what
yeah,
that's been
that
my
doesn't
one
help
work
though.
on.
Because I'll remember it all day and I'll go to bed. I'll be like, that was fun. And then I'll wake up at like 3 a.m., which to me is like the evil hour. And I'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, fuck, something woke me up. I'm an old lady who still gets scared very easily. So it's all right.
I'm there with you. And Duke, I think that you also mentioned before we started recording that I don't know if you mentioned that you get scared easily or that you just weren't really into horror movies like growing up,
Yeah,
which
no,
I take as you were scared of them.
no, I just didn't really watch them too much. I'm trying to think of a horror, like, man, no, I can't even think of a horror movie I would have watched growing up. Really, I mean, I was all about that. When October hit, it was Halloween Town on the Disney Channel. That would be my
Hocus
jam.
Pocus.
I've never seen Hocus Pocus either. Actually.
Really?
It's on
Actually,
my-
I
on
I
my
just saw
watch
Hocus
list
Pocus
this
for the
year.
first time last year or 2 years ago. I forget, but I could
Yeah.
see that being a
Hocus
good.
Pocus is it's the same era,
Yeah.
but no, I've never checked it out. But yeah, no, now it's like I'm really into the horror well, I wouldn't say really into, but I watch a good fair amount, and Scream
Mhm.
is right up there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, same. I don't know. The supernatural wouldn't. It's like nothing's too scary until like you're like home alone and it's
Uh-huh.
dark
Yeah.
out, and then you triple check all the locks and you check every
Yeah.
room before you
Close
go
your
to bed.
closet
But
door.
yeah, not scared, but entertained more, I guess, with watching
Okay.
movies.
That's fair.
Going back to Hocus Pocus, it's not like my favorite movie, but it's a great palate cleanser. So like
Yeah.
during October, you watch something that's like, pretty scary or
Mhm.
whatever will keep you up at night. For me, the way to like ease my brain is by watching something like Hocus Pocus.
Yeah,
It's
something
like
light.
still in
Yeah.
the same, spirit of the season, but way less scary and like easier to fall asleep when Hocus Pocus is the last
It's
thing that
on,
you've
yeah.
watched, as opposed to, the Blair Witch Project or whatever.
That's actually a good point. There are a lot of for me it's like Ichabod and Mr. Toad, like that old cartoon that you grow up with that's
Hmm.
kind of like the family oriented, still Halloween, but really like kind of fun. I would much rather watch that before I go to bed than something really scary. But Hocus Pocus is one of those I wish I kind of had seen when I was younger. I probably would have loved it. I mean, it's very dated and kind of cheesy as an adult, but it's
Hmm.
still a fun watch. I still enjoyed it.
Yeah. We're unfortunately not doing a Hocus Pocus episode.
Yeah.
We do have to get to
Yet.
Scream. Yeah. So I guess to get us into to Scream, this will be a really fun conversation, especially like I said, bouncing off of the conversation that we had last week, talking about Psycho and that sort of being the prototype for the slasher subgenre as we've sort of come to know it. And this movie, coming out 36 years after Psycho, which is insane to think that
Yeah.
there was that much time in between. But this is sort of like the not end point, but this is like the end goal of the genre, where this movie and so much of its appeal is how it like is very self-referential, extremely meta, and like all of its commentary and being super self-aware that it is a slasher flick. And you know like I said, Psycho sort of like starts the subgenre, and then you get Scream, and it's sort of like the punctuation point. So I feel like this should be fun. But to get us started, let's start with our typical first question. And why don't both of you give me a sense of your first time watching this movie, what you sort of thought initially, and all of that stuff. And I think I want to start with Ramona because I have an idea of what Duke's answer is going to be. So I am more curious to hear what Ramona has to say on this one.
Um so I saw Scream when I was 15. It had come out in theaters already, but obviously being 15, I could not yet see it in the theater. But it did come out on I don't know if it was on VHS. Was VHS still a thing in 96? I think it was.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Um
yeah.
but I got that movie to watch at home, and I remember my younger sister watched it with me in the dark in the living room by ourselves. And I have a very just distinct visual of sitting there watching it. The first scene kind of just took me out. I was just so freaking scared, because even at 15, I was home alone a lot because both of my parents worked. So being home alone, watching that scene, it scared me, but it hooked me too. Like I was already kind of getting into my
Hmm.
horror love of the genre through other movies, and Scream was just something I had never seen before. I wasn't really into slasher flicks at the time, but that really kind of turned my interest. And I do remember back in the day, you youngins, we had landlines. And I do recall halfway through the movie, the phone did start ringing, and it was late at night, and both of me and my sister were freaking terrified.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was my other sister calling, so it wasn't a big deal. But like, I have just a very distinct memory of that night watching that movie, and I was just obsessed with it, so much so that I snuck in to see Scream 2 when it came out in theaters the next year, with my friends from school. We got tickets, I think, for That Thing You Do. I think it was. I can't remember,
Nice.
but we got tickets for that, and then we snuck into Scream 2. So, which is
Another
actually,
back in the day thing.
yeah,
Like
back in the
buying
day thing.
tickets for one
Yeah.
movie and then sneaking into the R-rated movie. Yeah, that was
And
so much
what's
fun.
awesome though is the guy, I was 16, it was 16 or 17 when Scream 2 came out. And I had not yet started working at the theater, but the guy who was checking the tickets at the door first, because this is when they still had ushers checking your ticket to make sure you weren't sneaking in. So we were trying to play it cool. He barely glanced at our ticket. So we are just like, oh, cool. But that guy ended up being my husband now. So
What?
yeah, he was checking tickets at the door, and I started working at the theater later that month, and he was an assistant manager there, and now we're married. So
Holy crap, that's
yeah.
amazing.
So there was our meet cute, but no, we did actually talk to each other at the time. But so yeah, it was Scream was just kind of my introduction into like really getting into slasher flicks, and I think a big reason for it was because it was suspenseful, it was funny, and it was gory, but it wasn't over the top like some of them can get. And I just think it struck that perfect balance of everything I wanted in a horror movie. So that was my first introduction to Scream, was the year it came out, and it was just, I still love it even now, and I think it holds up really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, there's so much there between
Yeah.
the phone ringing the first time you're watching it to meeting your future husband, seeing the sequel.
Yeah. It's great.
And this being the movie that like introduced you to your love of the genre. Like,
Yes.
there's so much there. Duke, are you able to top it with your first time watching this movie, or just your background relationship to it?
Yeah, actually, the first time I watched this movie, I was actually seated right beside Matthew Lillard.
No, you just had to top me, did you?
Yeah, he's my uncle, actually. No big, no. No, nothing fancy like that. I didn't really see it till about 3 years ago. Scream 2022 was coming out, and I wanted to see them, and they were just on a streaming service, and I watched like all four at the time, like back to back, one each day, and like instantly after I watched, like somehow, despite it coming out in '96, I went like 25 years without knowing like the twist, the Ghostface twist. Like I was never spoiled on that.
You never knew. Wow.
I never knew. Unlike, like Star Wars, where everybody knows who Darth Vader is. Never knew about that twist.
But you did know about the opening scene thing.
Yeah, I knew about the whole opening scene, and and then so I kind of fell in love with that. Like I consider Scream kind of like my go-to. Well, it's like top three for horror slasher franchises. And I was just after seeing this 1996 original. So yeah, it's I love the genre. I love when you get meta with stuff and kind of play with the expectations. So no meet cute or anything like that. Just good old binging. 21st century binging.
There we go. Very different from the from the 90s vibes of Ramona getting a call on her landline.
On my landline.
Yeah, Ramona, me and Raph aren't like, we're not babies.
You were babies. Come on.
We grew up with landlines.
Did you grow up with the internet?
I remember dial-up internet. Like, come on.
I was born before there was even that. So I'm just saying. Books and encyclopedias. That's how we learn things.
Wild stuff. We know about encyclopedias.
Yeah.
That is one of the things though in my notes of just like how perfectly 90s this is, and like
Oh
the
yeah.
use of the
Mm-hmm.
landline as like a narrative device is so perfect.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's actually not in my recommendations, but like now just thinking about it out loud, I feel like part of the appeal of a show like Seinfeld is that so many of his
Yeah.
jokes are about landlines, and it is that show is like both so timeless in its humor, but also so like pointedly 90s in its humor, because so much of it is around all of this stuff with phones, which is such a unique
Well, there's
sort of technology. And I know it's not unique to the 90s, but it feels like the 90s was like a peak time to like play with that technology in
Mm-hmm.
media in terms of like how we were using it, or relating to it and all that stuff, how it like influenced our lives. Like you know a movie like this obviously could have been made before, even Halloween. There are many scenes where landline phones play an important role, but there's something about like the way that landline phones were used in the 90s that feels very perfect for this
Oh
particular
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you have like the cell phone stuff and the
well,
pagers and
the cell phone bit in this movie I thought was like you couldn't do that now. Where Sydney's talking to Ghostface the first time, and she's like, "If you're on my porch, how am I talking to you then?" Oh, and then I was like, "What?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, yeah." But then of course, what's his face? The cell phone drops out. So I was like, "Okay, so I guess people did have, it wasn't as common. Like every 10-year-old has a cell phone, but I mean, it was around." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely not as it is today, where it's kind of a part of you now, is
a
having
lot,
a phone in
a
your
lot of
hand. But
movies, yeah, with like you
and which
said,
is kind of
Seinfeld
a
without a cell phone.
shame, because I feel like there's so many great ideas that just kind of fall apart when you think about, oh well, they could just use a cell
Cell
phone
phone.
to like and you can't,
Mhm.
or be like, oh no, you don't have any service. Like, it's just so convenient to have that excuse. But
And
I
it
think of
is,
movies back in the 80s and early 90s that, if you didn't have a cell phone, you were fucked. If you're off, you run out of gas, or you're somewhere in a farmhouse, whatever,
Yeah.
great horror film, environment. But then it's like now, oh, I have a cell phone, I'll just call AAA. Like, it doesn't set up, I guess, the same way as it used to.
yeah, I think, and we'll talk about like the rest of the franchise probably towards the end of this conversation, but
Hmm.
I'm sure that that's something that the as the story goes on that they have to grapple with, is like the changing phone technologies and like how that can change the way that it is that Ghostface is trying to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. But
Hmm.
also just like more generally, it seems like it does make telling stories like this more difficult, but I also feel like there is so much potential there to create like really interesting worlds around, whether it be, horror movies or anything else, that we just like haven't fully figured out how to properly utilize smartphone technology within narrative filmmaking in a
Yeah.
way that like that seems to work in a way that we can all agree on, which is
Yeah.
just a weird sort of like side conversation. Um, but not something that, you had to really think about in 1996 when watching Scream.
Right. Right.
The like there were some cell phones, there were pagers and all that stuff, and like the most technology that we had was the use of like star 67 or star 69 and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Star 69.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is I mean in its own right like a very important sort of
Yeah.
advancement or whatever in phone technology that does allow you to do certain things with both in real life and in storytelling.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I didn't think that we were going to get to the phone portion of the conversation so early on, but I am happy that we've had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I did think that we were going to get to this early on, or perhaps earlier, is that opening scene, which is one of the most iconic opening scenes in movie history. You could probably put it top 5, top
Hmm.
3. It's absolutely amazing. To me, it's the scariest part of the movie, like
Mm-hmm.
hands down. The rest of the movie is very fun, but in terms of just like pure scares, that's the scene. So, Duke, having watched this for the first time 3 years ago, what were your thoughts on that opening scene? How did you sort of react to it, especially like knowing that it was coming or like was going
Yeah.
to end up the way that it ends up? Like,
Well,
how did you read that?
I had heard, I guess, marketing wise, everybody believed Drew Barrymore was like one of the leads. Like used her heavily. So I
Hmm.
guess it's almost like, as we talked last week with Psycho, kind of like you're expecting this actor to play a huge part in the movie, only for them to kill her off
Hmm.
earlier than expected for shock value, but also to drive the story. So yeah, still a great opening scene. What's your favorite? Do you like scary movies? All that stuff, all these classic lines we have. And it is kind of like kill wise, this is some of the most gory ghost face killings we have in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The guts are coming out, they hang her up.
Yeah.
My one issue with the scene, I don't know if you two share it, is I look at Drew Barrymore's character and I'm just like, that's like the fakest wig. Like I never buy like her with that hair. Like I'm always like, it just always looks too fake. That's my one issue. I'm always just like, it just looks like you can buy everybody else as a teenage, but I don't know. I always look and I'm like, oh man, Drew Barrymore looks like she's like they shoved her in a wig to make her look young. I don't know. That's my one issue. But the rest is great. They're running around, locking doors, the
Oof.
games. Yeah. But that wig, I'm always like, just no. Takes me out. Takes me out a
Yeah.
bit. Looks fake.
Interesting. You might be the only person who is that hung up on the wig, but
I don't know. It just takes me out. I'm always like, that just looks fake. And then I'm always like, it takes me out of the movie a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
wigs are
just,
fake. I don't
yeah.
know what to tell you, man.
But not good wigs. Good wigs can. I'm just saying.
We've already spent too much time on the wig. Ramona, what are your thoughts on the opening scene?
I've never had a problem with the wig. Just get that out of the way. I don't know. I think it actually I think Drew Barrymore's whole look in the beginning scene is like part of what makes it's so recognizable now. You see
Hmm.
somebody when I go to Horror Hound, I see people dressed up as Casey and it's like immediately who it is just by the hair. But I don't know, the opening scene, like I said earlier, that's what really hooked me into knowing that this was going to be a fantastic movie. And like Duke said, you know, this being back in the day before the internet was like the internet and you could find out anything on there. And I wasn't online that much. So I didn't really know that she died in the beginning of the movie. I knew that she was in the movie. I'd seen the commercials, you see the trailer and stuff. No
Hmm.
clue she was going to actually die. But I don't want to say it was shocking. It was just more of like, wait, what? Like, she already died. Drew Barrymore is the biggest name in that movie.
Hmm.
And fun. I've never seen Psycho, but I know what happens to was it Janet Leigh? I know what happens to her character. So I don't know. It was just everything about the opening scene just kind of sets the tone, the tension, the building of her panic, the building of the anger in Ghostface's voice as he keeps calling her back because she hangs up on him.
Yeah.
Even when she's trying to save Steve's life, her boyfriend, by answering these questions, and then he gets gutted, and it's just like one of those you can't stop watching it and you're like holding your breath through the whole thing. And you just want her to get away so bad, and then you see her parents coming down the road and she's so close, and oh my god, it's just like at the very end when her parents get there and it's too late and she's hanging on the tree. It's just, oh my god. Like, it's very rare for me now to watch a horror movie where an opening scene will like get that kind of reaction from people anymore. And of course, with not to go into like the sequels too much, but they try to up that opening scene with every new Scream movie, and you're just never going to do it. That is the
Yeah.
standard, I think, for a lot of not only the Scream movies that came after, but the horror films that came after. You see the things that are made now aren't really necessarily trying to be like Scream, but the movies that are, they try really hard to emulate that performance, and you can't. It's just everything about it, the music, the dialogue, Drew Barrymore's acting. I mean, she's always been a fun actress for me, but I think that just in those few minutes she's on screen is some of her best work, to be honest.
Yeah, she's actually like brilliant in that scene.
Yeah,
And I feel
you
like that gets
feel her
lost.
fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that gets lost in a lot of, the discussion around it because
Hmm.
there's so much else that's amazing about that scene. But her performance is like, that kind of stood out to me this time. Like she's really crushing it there.
Oh yeah, she was great.
Do you think it sort of sets up a sense that like no one is safe for the
Yes.
rest of the movie, which I
Yes.
feel like makes things even scarier?
Yeah, because I mean, you right after her death, I mean, you're introduced to, Sydney and the other main characters, and A, you don't know who the killer is, and B, I mean, they just killed off Drew Barrymore. Like, so
Mhm.
who's the final girl now? Like, the first time you watch it, if you don't know anything about this movie, you're like, what is happening, and what's going to happen to these people, and am I going to care like I did in the first scene? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's brilliant.
And there's you don't know when you're first introduced to those characters, like who they are, what their stories are, like
Hmm.
who might be able to slot into the final girl or just like main protagonist sort of role. Like we don't know any of
Right.
their backstories. They were relatively, not that they weren't famous people, they're all, good actors in at the time, but not to the level of Drew Barrymore. Like if Drew Barrymore can be killed off, then anyone can be killed off,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
like now we know, Neve Campbell, like total star, but
Yeah.
she was not Drew Barrymore in
She,
1996.
she was Party of Five. Nev Campbell is who she was at the time, and I think The Craft. And I don't know if The Craft came in before or after Scream, to be honest with you, but
Insane that Nev Campbell and what's his name, Skeet
Skeet Ulrich. Yeah.
Ulrich were both in The Craft and this.
Yeah.
They were just crushing it.
Yeah. That was a good couple of years for 90s horror, I think.
The other like really brilliant thing about that opening scene, Duke, is that they just like drop you in. Like there's just no, I think like the first thing that we get when it cuts from black is just the phone call. It's like an insane, just like, okay, this movie is starting and we're here now and this is what we're doing.
I agree.
Do you before we move on to the rest of the movie, do you guys have any other thoughts on the brilliance of this opening scene?
No, I don't think so. There's only so much you can say about it, it's not as long as I remembered it back when I first saw it. It felt like it went on forever.
Mhm.
But that was more because like you're scared and you want her to get out and you're yelling at the screen, and but watching it, now it seems to go by so fast, but
Man, I had the
I don't
opposite.
know.
I thought it was
Really?
I thought it was longer than I remembered. And I also thought there was a part where like initially like they're playing a joke on her, like the boyfriend and like his friends, like they're faking like the phone call on him getting killed. And then like no, then the ghost face comes and kills them. So I was also like waiting for like, okay, isn't there like something else happening? And I was like, oh, and I guess I'm misremembering this. And then it was
Oh,
still going on long. I forgot the parents come up. I just remember
yeah.
the boyfriend getting like slashed open and then her like hanging. So I thought it
Well,
was
there's
like way
yeah.
quicker. I forgot there was this whole game and her running around. The popcorn
Yeah.
slowly burning up, like the popcorn slowly
Hmm.
getting overcooked and then smoking. That's kind of like a cool background detail, I thought.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
forgot
Like
about the popcorn
I wonder if that's in the script or if that's just something, like they put
It's got to be
together
because there
when
are
they're like,
multiple shots,
of the
like
pot. Yeah,
close-ups
the
of the
smoke
popcorn
and
popping, and then you get the smoke to sort of like set the like spooky atmosphere mood
yeah.
throughout the house.
this would be a good
Also,
to read, I think, because there's a lot of like stuff you see kind of planned out in the background. You're like, is that like you come up with that as you're making the movie? Was that always like Kevin Williamson's
Oh, interesting.
idea. He wrote that down in the script.
Well, what are some of the other examples that you're thinking of while we're here?
Oh man, don't put me on the spot like that.
You literally put
There's some
yourself on the
stuff. Well,
spot.
there's
You brought you brought something up, and then you're like, "There's so much here."
Well, I don't want to get. I know we're going to talk about one other part of it's more related to Ghostface. We're going to talk about it later, so then I want to save it for then. It's the only note I made, so we'll
That's
save
fair.
it. But
Okay.
okay,
Okay. I just thought that.
What about you though? What did
yeah,
you think
Raph.
when you first saw this movie? You
Do you
didn't tell us
like
your
scary
story.
movies?
I was always really scared of scary movies growing up, and I don't think I had seen Scream for a while. And then I think I've mentioned it on the show before, probably in past, spooky movies that we've done.
Mhm.
But in college, I took a horror movie class. So I like essentially forced myself to watch all of these spooky movies that I had not seen in the past. And one of the movies on the what's that thing called? Syllabus.
Syllabus.
Those. Remember those?
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
one of the movies on the syllabus was Scream, or I guess it was Scream 2. That was like what we were screening in the class, but part of our homework was to watch Scream. And that was the first time that I really like sat down and watched it. And, at that point had obviously known about the Drew Barrymore of it all, but that was like kind of the extent that I
Mhm.
was familiar with Scream. So I was like totally blown away with it. I thought it was a ton of fun. I thought the like self-referential aspect to it was really, really smart, but that's like kind of obviously something that a 20-year-old college guy is gonna love.
Yeah.
So that was like, to me, that was like the coolest part of the movie. And then watching Scream 2 and being like, oh, this is then like a double reference about slasher sequels. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did really enjoy it the first time I watched it, and something that I not necessarily watch every, October, but most October since then, I have given this a rewatch because it is so much fun. I don't know where we want to go next. I guess we can talk a little bit about how meta and self-referential this movie is, because in many ways it like goes like right up to the line of being annoying, kind of snarky without ever crossing it, which I think is the movie's biggest success besides the opening scene. So I don't know, like Ramona, what did you think of all of that? I guess you hadn't really had much background in terms of other horror movies to like get all the references, but I'm curious what you thought of that, like the first time you watched it, or what you've thought of it since, now that you have like built out this, more robust love for the genre.
Yeah, I hadn't seen a whole lot of horror when I saw Scream, so a lot of those references kind of like went over my head. So a lot of like when I'd watch horror after Scream, I'd be like, "Oh, this is what he was talking about," or "This is what they reference," you know.
Yeah.
I had seen Halloween because I had watched that actually on Halloween with my mom. I think the year before, or 2 years before. So like seeing that, at the end when Randy's watching Halloween, laying on the couch when Ghostface comes in behind him, that excited me. I was like, okay, I know that movie, but watching horror now, especially going back and watching some like 80s horror and stuff like that, I think when I watch Scream again, I have more appreciation for a lot of the self-awareness that A, the movie has, and B, that the characters have within the movie.
Hmm.
I just thought it was really clever. And coming from Kevin Williamson, who honestly before Scream I had never heard of. I don't know. I think Dawson's Creek came after Scream and everything. So it was like, I didn't know who this guy was, but it's like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Like how he was able to write so much. I don't even want to say it's not even like parody or satire because it's not really, but the fact that he was able to put so much into Scream, and it was like being very self-aware, and it was done in a way that you're like, you can laugh with it and you can recognize it, but you're not like, oh, they're making fun of it, but not in a way that's like to come later with Scary Movie. Those movies, you know what I mean, where they're just making fun of
It's not like a full on
shit.
spoof.
Yeah, it's not a spoof, but it's really, it's making fun of the genre while also paying homage to the genre at the same time and showing it respect. And the way that they were able to do that and blend it so seamlessly is really impressive to me, and it's still really hard, I think, even for modern horror now to do that as well as Scream did it.
It's such a hard balancing game to be within and operate within the genre while also, it's not even like poking fun at the genre. It's really just being aware of its existence.
These are the beats of this genre and we're going to follow them, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, I think because we've seen so many other examples of movies like trying to do this, even outside of this genre, like it's hard to do anywhere. Like we've seen so many movies try and fail. And I think that speaks to how difficult it is and how impressive it is that this movie pulls it off. Duke, I don't know if you have anything on all the self-referential meta commentary-ness of this movie. Just what are your general thoughts on all that stuff?
Man, Ramona talked a bit about it. And I will say that without delving too much in the sequels, I'll just say this one does a really good job at finding the balance of, also being a slasher and then knowing when to kind of be like, oh, this is the part where so-and-so, the killer will always, actually still be alive. And then they introduce that recurring trope of you gotta shoot Ghostface right in the head or the forehead, and then he's dead anytime before that. Where I feel like the later films, because you don't want to reuse the same meta tropes too much, they start to kind of get a bit too silly and unrealistic, where this one does a really good job at finding the balance of when to be meta, when to actually be a slasher movie. There are a couple things I thought it contradicted itself a bit in the term.
Like
just
what?
With the idea that the final girl's usually a virgin and that she can't die unless she's had sex. But earlier in the movie, Ghostface kind of tries to kill Sydney, even though she's still a virgin at that point. So I was like,
she's not able to die because she's a virgin.
Well, she doesn't die then, but they did try to kill her. So had they succeeded, so yes,
were they just trying to scare her?
Well, I guess it's open to interpretation, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
But so again, it does work on layers of being like, okay, in a slasher aspect, she couldn't die because she was still a virgin. But in the idea of it being meta and that she couldn't die, well then, do you know that she was, like layers?
Yeah. But sorry, just quickly going back to what Ramona's saying. So like the idea that they were just trying to scare her because at the end, spoilers alert for anyone who's made it this far into the show and has not seen Scream. Spoiler alert, they were waiting for the anniversary of when they killed Sydney's mom to kill Sydney. So like those earlier attempts, we'll say with air quotes, could have just been attempts to scare her, which I had never thought about, but Ramona, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that they were attempting to traumatize her and scare her and knock her off her game. Especially, you see and whether I guess there can be some discussion when she and Billy argue at school and she runs off to the bathroom and then you see the boots on the ground and the ghost face costume come down over the boots and attack her, basically. They're not going to kill Sydney in the bathroom. Like, you can say, okay, well, that wasn't really Billy or Stu or whatever, but I think it was.
There's a lot of risks, the unnecessary risks they're taking.
But they're teenage psychopaths. Like, what are they? I mean, true. I don't know that they were thinking very clearly about some of this stuff, but I think, when they attack her at home, in the bathroom, and they try to scare her on the phone, I think that's all just them trying to knock her off her game, to get her scared enough that when they actually decide to kill her, it'll be, I don't know, more satisfying than just being like, surprise, here we are after we've killed all these people and not said one thing to you. So I've always taken it as, just them trying, after you find out that Billy and Sue are the killers and it was her mom, et cetera, et cetera.
Have you ever tried to watch it and then try to figure out which Ghostface is Billy and which one is?
You know,
Because
what's
I was
really funny
watching and
about
I was trying to figure
yeah.
out if I was thinking like which one's Matthew Lillard? Stu.
They,
I was trying to figure out if Stu's the one that like wipes the blade clean. Because Ghostface
They
does
said-
that twice, and I'm like, is that just Stu doing that? Because
and that became like a Ghostface like standard to wipe that blood.
Recurring
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. They, I
That
actually
strikes me as
went.
more Billy.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I
And
think
went,
in this, but Billy is no. But I think at least when I caught it the second time, I was like, okay, this has to be Stu based on where Billy
killed
would be.
Casey, because that was kind of given away at the beginning when they're all sitting by the fountain, and he said, and somebody mentioned Stu killing her, and he said, I didn't kill anybody, and Billy's like, no one said you did, and gives him that look because he was with Tatum the night before, so it was Billy who killed Casey. But I was just at Horror Hound in Cincinnati a couple weekends ago, and Skeet Ulrich was there, and they had a Scream panel, and somebody actually asked him who was who, like which kill was with who had which kill in Scream. Was it Billy or Stu? And he said most of the time they didn't even know. He said every now and then, he's like, Kevin Williamson, Wes Craven never told them like, oh, this was Billy, oh, this was Stu. He said they would take turns in the Ghostface costume in the scene. They said
so it actually was them within the like.
Yeah. A lot of the times it was
who was playing just Ghostface.
Yeah,
okay.
They got to dress up as Ghostface, and he said that there was one scene at the part with Randy on the couch, and you see Ghostface in the TV coming in behind him, right? And Skeet Ulrich said they shot that twice, and one was Stu was in, Matthew Lillard was in the costume, and then the next take they did Skeet Ulrich in the costume. So he was just like, we never actually knew who was going to be doing what at any time. So it was just, and I think sometimes too with the stunts, they didn't do the stunts. But I thought that was really interesting, because I was like, if I'm writing a slasher where there's two killers, I would almost want to have notes or write down or know who it is killing who, because that feels like a continuity issue if you don't.
I was looking up how. Well, because, of course, as we all know, Dewey and Gail get together, and Dewey was like, oh, I'm 25. And I'm like, and Gail made some comment about her being older. And I was like, what's the age gap here? So I Googled it, and Dewey's age popped up after like the third movie, like continuity error. And I was like, clicked on it, and then there's a long list of continuity errors across these movies.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, and I think after a while, unless you have like some kind of like series Bible that you go to, you kind of sort of. I think sometimes you just fudge it up to make it work. You know what I mean? So, but it's really interesting to me. The only one that I think is super obvious is Billy killed Casey and Tatum. I think those two were the big ones.
Oh, I thought
it's really interesting. Just to quickly jump in here, because I've never really like given it much thought as to which kills are done by who, but and I don't know that it's because I don't think that it's like, it's not important for me in terms of like how I watch the movie, but I can see where like having that information or like thinking through who might be doing what, who might be which particular Ghostface can sort of like change the way that you're reading the movie.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like sort of like these two guys are like becoming one in their demented brains. And it's, obviously when we get to the end and we get to the reveal of like why they did it and like how their brains become melded and demented is like so hilarious. But also like, because of how hilarious it is, like it does make sense that these are two very different types of killers. So knowing which one is doing which kill does make the movie like that much more interesting in terms of like when you're watching it. But sorry, Duke, I think I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say, first, I was like, I thought Stu had killed Tatum, because I think at that point, wasn't Billy and Sydney in the bedroom, but also Stu leaves right before Tatum, I think.
Billy
and we don't know where
Sydney
Stu went for a bit. And then Stu comes back. So that's why I always thought Stu had killed
Billy actually shows up after Tatum dies. Tatum dies, and then they open the door and Billy kind of pops in real quick at the door and he gives Stu a look, like a little nod.
Oh,
which
she
to me was him
dies
saying
before
she's
Billy
dead.
even shows up. Right.
They don't even find Tatum, like, and
They
she's
never
actually
do.
in. Yeah, she's well. Sydney does, because she's, after she has sex with Billy, and she's attacked. She
Then
goes out.
Stu
Remember, she
attacks
goes
her,
out the
that's right.
window and falls down on the boat, and that's when she looks up and
Mm,
sees Tatum kind of hanging from the door,
right.
the doggy door.
I always
So
thought would her head actually have smashed, or could she?
no,
Well, I
that
guess,
was
yeah.
yeah, broke her neck, I think, but that was the biggest doggy door I've ever seen in my life.
Well,
So I guess they had to make it work.
going back to the two ghost faces earlier in the movie, which I never registered it the first time I'm watching, because of course I didn't know. But the second time watching, when like there's Ghostface terrorizing the halls, and then the principal, there's two actors wearing Ghostface masks, and then he like reprimands them. So I thought that's kind of good foreshadowing there.
Yeah, that was good.
Absolutely.
Which you wouldn't pick
Poor
up on
Fonzie.
unless you know.
Felt really bad for him.
I definitely thought he was in the sequel. Like I definitely like there's some blending, I think, going on of all these movies after a while that I'm
I can see that though.
So I do want to go back to one thing that I think, Ramona, you mentioned, which I find very interesting, and it kind of goes to the conversation that we were having like at the beginning of the episode. But the idea that this movie is like kind of really grounded and sort of realistic in the way that it depicts like a slasher, or as realistic as it can be. But I feel like one of the most interesting parts of that, especially with it being just like two psychotic teenage boys, is how like clumsy and goofy the Ghostface entity sort of becomes in a lot of the moments. Like, unlike a Jason or a Michael Myers or even like a Freddy or like a Leatherface, or all the other great iconic slashers, Ghostface gets like constantly hit in the head, is like constantly falling down and slipping, and like proves to be time after time like extremely vulnerable to like basic human sort of pain. Yeah. It's like kind of similar to what like Die Hard does with the action hero. Like this movie does that for the slasher, which I always find to be like one of the most interesting, entertaining aspects of the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that about that was also something that was mentioned, because I don't think a lot of that was scripted, and I think Skeet Ulrich actually said that when someone asked him. He's like, "That's just them. They're not, that they're showing that these killers are human.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, like you said, a Michael Myers who can get blown up in a house and still walk out and murder a bunch of firefighters. Like these are the." And that makes it the unkillable killer. But these guys are human.
Mm-hmm.
They're susceptible to pain, and I think that does make it a little bit scarier, because these are real people under there, and realizing this is a real person who's doing this to people is terrifying. But it also is funny, because they're running up the stairs and they get a plant thrown at their head and they fall down the stairs. It's funny.
It allows for like some really like good physical comedy.
For real.
Within a scene that is like otherwise terrifying, where you're like, scared for these people's lives, but like, you're terrified that Tatum is gonna, meet her final demise in the garage, but also she throws a beer at the killer. Like, that's funny.
And it's nice to see like the victims. Casey just did a bunch of running around, and I can't blame her for that, but like it's nice to see like a victim like Tatum fight back and try to get out of it, and unfortunately it didn't work out for her, but it kind of makes it, I don't know, I don't want to say it makes it more realistic, but it does. I mean, I think that's part of what makes it scary.
Sydney kicks him in the nuts. Like that's
really funny. Good for her.
Yeah. So the other thing with the two killers and the boys that is a lot less fun is like thinking about the psyche of the two of them, which is also kind of part of that like real grounded aspect of it, where Billy is like this terribly scorned, or he feels like this scorned boy, and the only way that he can correct the wrongs of the world that have been done to him is by killing a bunch of people. And then you have Stu, and he's just like, yeah, man, peer pressure.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. And it's like, it's so insane, but it is also like horrifyingly plausible that someone like Stu could fall into this. And I don't want to take us down this road like too much, but rewatching this movie, I was like, this is kind of like Columbine killer coded, where like these dudes are so messed up and they're enacting this terrible violence on their classmates. And like part of it might just be because like his friend asked him to do it. Obviously we've all done dumb stuff with peer pressure, but never to the point of, I'll murder like my girlfriend and a couple of my classmates because my friend is mad that his mom left him. Like, but it goes back to, it's like this, it's the flip side of the killer falls over token. Duke, what do you make of the like sort of like realism and grounded aspect of the movie, whether it, anything that we spoke about or anything else that
I don't know if
like
I can back this up for the sequels in terms of what I'm about to say, but at least in this movie, it seems like Ghostface, like Michael Myers, is unstoppable with the mask on. And as soon as that mask is off, they're a lot more, they don't, fall over and keep going, and they're Bruce Willis, Die Hard, invincible. Stu is just like, man, I'm bleeding out. I think you cut me too deep.
Oh,
all of a sudden they stab. And right before I watched this, I was on X and someone had commented, Matthew Lillard's line reading of my mom and dad are going to be so mad at me is like, amazing. So I'm waiting for that line. And then he says, and I'm like, that is great. Like the whole, did you actually call the cops? You bet I did. My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me.
I mean,
I'm like, that is just so true. Like, oh no, they're good.
I don't think that was in the script either. I think he ad-libbed that.
Good. It is great. It's like you just feel that. Like you're just like, oh yeah, I've been that. Oh no, you told my parents. Oh man, I'm gonna be in so much shit.
But also, like, how hilariously insane is that? He's not worried about the fact that he has been murdering people. He's just worried that his mom and dad are gonna find out that he murdered people.
And they're gonna be pissed.
That's real. That's so realistic though. That's just the teen dilemma. Is like
And I think with Billy, he was the real psychopath there.
Oh, definitely.
And I absolutely believe that he was intending Stu to die and then to pin it all on Stu at the end.
Well, see, that's another thing. I was like, I'm waiting for him to be like, oh, what's even better? Like, only if one of us survives. But then as we're recording this, I'm like, oh wait, no, that comes later in the franchise.
That comes later. Yeah, but I feel like that was the direction.
But I'm definitely thinking, I was like, when he's like, hey man, like, stop it, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
got me really deep, man.
I think he was going to die. I think he was going to bleed out.
No. Stu's still alive.
And that's funny because that's a big
theory
discussion in the Scream fandom is of whether or not Stu is alive. And I do not believe he is, because if he was, I cannot imagine we've going into 7 movies without anyone mentioning that he somehow survived a very deep stab wound and a television on his face. So
the television on his face as just like,
comedy
imagery of death of, this dude who, again, like going back to like a lot of conversations that were being had in the 90s of like, are kids, being drawn to violence because of, or being inspired by it, by like what they see on TV and all that stuff, and him literally dying at the hands with his face in the TV is, a pretty strong image. We will say, but also we touched on it a little bit. Matthew Lillard's acting, particularly in that last scene, some of the most inspired acting work we've ever seen.
Oh, he's great.
He's great.
I think he's very underrated, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So he was
bigger.
Yeah, and actually, I know he's in the some new movie coming out. Like, I don't know what it is. The Life of Chuck, which is Mike Flanagan.
Oh, is he in that? I know.
Yeah, he's in that, and apparently he got some really great reviews. from that movie. So I'm hoping this will start like a Matthew Lillard renaissance. That would be
I
amazing.
love that.
Yeah. But he and Randy obviously are the comedic,
Yeah.
parts of this movie, comedy relief, I think. But at the same time, at the end, when the reveal happens, like Billy is very sinister kind of focused, and Stu
Yeah.
is very silly, sinister focused. You know what I mean? He's just like, oh yeah, it was fun. We got to watch some scary movies and kill these people. And Billy's
Take a few
like
notes.
hardcore pissed, like he's gonna kill Sydney, right? So it's really interesting. And like you had mentioned earlier, how their personalities are so different, and yet they were still came together to commit these horrible, horrible crimes, and just their reactions to it at the end of how they went about it, and the humor and the amusement that Stu found in it is almost as horrifying as Billy's very calm, this is why I killed these people because you're whore of a mother, or whatever he called her. So it's just I just like the yin and yang of the two of them together, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's really interesting how their relationship sort of plays out, especially in like the way that it gets revealed in that last scene. With Matthew Lillard's performance, it kind of is similar to the self-referential aspect of the movie, where he goes so close to the line of it being way too over the top without ever actually crossing it.
Yeah.
And he keeps it reined in enough, I guess, to keep it brilliant.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a difficult, like the writing and the self-referential nature of the movie. It's such a hard, thing to find that line without fully crossing it. And I'm blown away every time that I watch it.
Yep. I agree.
So I guess with the sort of like reasoning behind it, one of the questions that I have for you guys is with Billy's, vendetta against the world, where he's mad at Sydney's mom for, being a whore, and not his dad for, also being a whore.
It's never the guy's fault.
Of course not. So Billy spends so much of the movie being so horny for Sydney, which is funny because like he's also mad at her mom for being horny. But do you think that hypocrisy is just because he knows that within a horror movie that you can't be killed if you're still a virgin? Do you think that's the only motivation that he has for sex?
Man, Raph, you're just opening up like the hypocrisy angle, and then that just made me think, like, Romona, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 2022 Scream, don't we find out that Billy was technically cheating on Sydney?
Oh yeah, he cheated on
so
Sydney.
Then he's the way, Raph, the way you're framing that question,
okay.
It's like he's the biggest hypocrite in the long run.
So yeah. I don't really like, just to like rein us back in to just talk about this movie and not the franchise as a whole. Ignoring everything that we know that has...
Ignoring everything we know. But also, you're not going to kill your dad. She's the one... I
think people have.
No, but I'm saying he doesn't like that Sydney's mom broke up his family. And that's why his mom left. So he doesn't view his dad as being in the wrong.
Yeah, it was Sydney's mom who broke up the family.
But Sydney's mom was also sleeping around. So it's just Sydney's mom's going around breaking up other families, blah, blah, blah. So
I don't want to get into the conversation of whether we should blame women for something that takes two people to do.
Yeah, let's not do that.
I don't want to have that conversation.
What was the question? Him being a hypocrite?
The question was his motivation for sex? Was it
the sex angle, right?
Was it a real motivation for sex, or did he just want to bet her because he knows that within a horror movie that a character cannot be killed if they're a virgin?
I think it was
more. I'm asking the meta question.
Yeah, I think it was the meta. I think if they are going by rules of slasher films, because it's Randy who's the one who keeps reminding us what the rules are. But if they're really going by the rules of a slasher film, then I can see it being the meta part where, okay, we're gonna just keep scaring her until I finally get her to sleep with me. And what a coincidence, it's going to be on the anniversary of her mother's death.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and have that part done where now, okay, now we can kill her because she's not a virgin anymore. But also, I think it was just him wanting to, you know, get her trust, have
Mm-hmm.
her sleep with him because she had been denying him that for a while, obviously, and then turn around and be like, "Hey, bitch, I killed your mom, and now I'm going to kill you." And it's revenge in his
Mm-hmm.
mind more than anything else. I think is to take that from her and then kill her and tell her why. And it's a way to bring her down, because he can't bring her mother down anymore, and he's just punishing her the same way he punished her mother. So I just think there are several motivations there, I think, than
Yeah.
just the rule of a slasher film.
It's it wasn't really something that I'd thought about before, but I had
Yeah.
always just read it as like, oh yeah, he's a teenage boy, like of course he's going to try to have sex with his girlfriend. But then I was
Right.
thinking like, oh, does he actually just want to have sex with her, or does he just want to kill her?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah,
Why not both?
Yeah. But it is interesting, like if the movie is, that many layers of self-referential deep, where a character's motivation is that because it is so very much so like working within the rules of the
Mhm.
genre.
Yeah.
Okay, the last thing that I have on the meta aspect of all of it, I just wanted to list the other movies within the canon that are referenced in this movie. So there are many other movies that also get referenced, but just in terms of classic essential horror movies that get referenced here, we got Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Halloween, Carrie, Frankenstein, and The Exorcist.
Wow.
6 canon movies that are referenced
That's awesome.
either directly
Nice.
or indirectly at some point in this movie, but mostly directly.
Wow. I've never actually sat down and thought about like all the movies that they reference, like from beginning to end, though. I'm sure there's more, but that's awesome that they're canon movies. And now Scream is canon. That's so meta. Like,
It's double meta.
double meta.
Also with Billy's last name, Loomis,
Hmm.
obviously a reference to Halloween. But
Yeah.
Duke, I don't know if you remember this from last week. Loomis is the name of the boyfriend in Psycho.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a triple reference that we've got with Billy Loomis. Insane.
That's awesome.
And then
Yeah.
Skeet is doing like a very obvious Johnny Depp homage, who is of course in Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah.
which was directed also by Wes Craven. And there's the cheeky Nightmare on Elm Street reference within the school with the principal.
Which is Wes Craven.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love it.
How many layers deep does this go?
It's never ending.
It's never ending.
Amazing. So yeah, the movie just insanely self-referential and meta when it comes to working within the genre. Duke, I want to go back to what you were saying before with the scripting of the movie and how it's like laying out a bunch of things ahead of time, and you had one thing in particular that you wanted to hold off on.
Oh, well, I kind of
do you wanna
mentioned
bring it
that.
up now?
I don't know if that was, I wouldn't say that was background, actually. It was just the 2 kids with the ghost face mask. I would say that would have also been in the script, but yeah, nothing too crazy there.
But that is still
Yeah.
good foreshadowing.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of like great misdirection in terms of who could be the killer. Well,
especially when you don't know there's 2 killers. And then, of course, Billy and Stu are constantly like, having alibis. It does kind of make it go to Randy because Randy's the one who has all these rules about horror movies. So I do believe the first time you watch it, the movie does paint it to make it look like Randy's going to be the killer. Only for him to be one of the survivors.
Interesting. Ramona, were you also thinking Randy the first time you saw it?
I actually cannot remember who I was. I think at some point I go through everybody, like, oh, they're the killer.
Mhm.
It's something you want to be like, no, they're the killer.
It's Sydney.
I thought
I don't know how, but it's her.
Sydney's the goddamn killer. No, I thought it was really well done because you think it's. I mean, the obvious choice was Billy, right?
Mhm.
And then he got arrested. And while he was arrested, the
They do the bait
killer
and switch with
Ghostface
Billy,
called.
kind of.
Yeah, they called Sydney. So then it was like, obviously, it couldn't have been Billy because he's in jail and he's not going to call her from jail as Ghostface. So that was kind of a nice little bait and switch there to get you thinking, okay, well, who else is it? I never thought it was Stu, to be honest with you. I remember never once thinking it might have been Stu until they opened the door and you see Randy was hurt and he's trying to convince them that it was Stu and Stu's trying to convince them it's Randy. So then you're just like, what the hell? Like, I think that's when I was like, oh shit, maybe it is Randy. And then, they pulled out a gun and shot him. So I knew it was not.
The movie, this was actually, now that you were just talking there, Ramona, it was making me think about the question some more. And actually, while you're watching it, I was kind of paying attention to if the movie does set up, like who it sets up. Because the principal, they kind of do a little bit with him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sheriff, like the older one.
Oh yeah.
He really has a few moments there, like when Dewey's having the ice cream and the sheriff is just kind of like his like face is kind of looking kind of sus, and I'm just like, oh man, this movie really does like set up.
Is that the same scene where he's smoking the cigarette and then and then there's like a very, very distinct shot of him putting out the cigarette with his boots, and it's the same boots that Ghostface wears.
Oh shit!
No, I don't know. I didn't make that connection if that is the scene, but
to me, that was always the one that stood out. Like it's got to be the boots. It's the boots.
Oh, nice catch! I never thought about that.
I should note that for my.
But it wasn't a nice catch because he wasn't the killer.
No, I know, but that thought that
probably
maybe it could
intentional,
be him.
though. That's another thing. Where is that in the script?
Mm-hmm.
That the sheriff and Ghostface have the same boots.
Has the same boots.
Because because if the scene where Ghostface is in the bathroom is before that scene, which I think it is, they do make a big deal of the boots going down, and then the costume lowering. So your mind would be on the boots, and then you see the sheriff stomp out the boots. So, again, just
layers.
There's Dewey, obviously.
Dewey, I don't think if Dewey would have been the killer, that would have been good because you take Dewey off. He's eating ice cream. He's right off.
Can we just have some appreciation though for Dewey? Mm-hmm. Because he's great. Up until the 5th movie, R.I.P., he was my favorite character in the entire franchise.
Yeah, Raph,
I'm so sorry.
Raph, as you learn in a Legacy sequel, the supporting cast, it's fair game now.
Dewey was my man.
Speaking of Dewey, the first film ends Dewey's fate left unknown.
Yes, and actually every movie he's in after that, I think he gets to the point where you're like, damn, he just died. And then it's like, no, he's alive. But he is so funny in such a subtle way in this movie because he's this cop and he's trying to be like, his sister still treats him like, an annoying brother. And he's like, I'm a cop right now. You can't treat me like that. But I think the first time I laughed out loud watching Scream was when this is right after Sydney gets attacked for the first time at her house and the cops are coming, but obviously they get there too late and the phone's like off the hook and they're taking her out. And Dewey just comes in and picks up the phone. He's like, hello? Like the Ghostface would still be on the phone somehow. I don't know why. It's one of the funniest things in the entire franchise. Every time I see that scene, I just crack up. And it's just my appreciation for Dewey knows no bounds. It's just him and Gale together really adds something to this movie.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's an amazing cast of characters. And I guess the main reason for having like the Dewey character and the sheriff and stuff, obviously they're tracking the killer, but I think you have this sort of ensemble to ensure that there are enough misdirections along the way in terms of like who could be the killer. This is super random, but it just popped back into my head. But another one of the great meta moments of this movie is when Randy is watching Halloween on the couch with Ghostface in the background, and he keeps telling Jamie, Lee Curtis to look
Turn
behind
around.
her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the
It's so
actor's
good.
name Jamie Kennedy, so it's like,
Yeah.
dude,
Oh,
you were the
Look
one who needs to
behind
turn
you.
around. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So good.
so good. And then the way that like within the house in that scene, that the sound from Halloween is like used and perfectly matches up. Like even like all of the like the notes of the score match up perfectly with different moments within the like the Scream movie that we're watching. It's
Yeah.
just all like super super remarkable the way that it lines up.
It's clever enough that it's almost like you have to watch it more than once to catch a lot of the references. Even like the nonverbal references is because I had noticed that about I didn't notice the boots, but I had noticed, when he's watching Halloween and Ghostface is coming in behind him while he's telling Jamie, turn around. But I never noticed how the music matches up. I never like my brain just never connected the two. So now I have to watch it again just to
Yeah.
see
And
because I
first
didn't catch it.
at first it seems like they're just like playing random bits of the score to
Yeah.
match up with particular scenes, but then you realize that it's just the full audio from the movie, and it
Yeah,
just so
that's awesome.
happens to line up with what's
It
happening
fits.
within. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Sweet.
great.
So good.
So one of the other things that I wanted to ask you guys is just sort of like where this movie like sits within the like overall sort of um like the over where this movie sits within the overall sort of like arc of slasher movies and horror movies, where obviously you have Psycho in 60, that's like the prototype, and then you have
Yeah.
Halloween in 77, and that sort of like gives us this boom of the genre within the late 70s and all throughout the 80s. And then
Hmm.
throughout the 80s you're getting all of these great franchises and sequels and stuff. And then like by the end of the 80s, it feels like kind of played out. And it's like,
Yeah.
slasher movies, like it's all the same. It's all super formulaic. Like we've seen Jason and Freddy and Leatherface do this time and time again, like yawn, boring. And then in like the early to mid 90s, the genre's kind of dead.
Yeah.
And then this movie
Yeah.
comes around and like totally breathes like new life into it. Do you guys like, how do you guys feel about that aspect of the movie and like what it was able to do to like um rejuvenate the slasher genre?
yeah. I don't know. I think the meta approach definitely you needed that. Like I think like it's playing on the tropes and how worn out the genre had become, how predictable, I guess I should say, the genre had become. Holy, can I get a sentence out? Let me redo that. I think it plays on the predictability that by the late 80s, they're taking Jason to Manhattan. Michael Myers, how many times can you come back? It's playing on these tropes, these cliches, but it's like it's in on it. And nothing more. Audiences love when movies kind of are like, we're aware of the problems and then we're going to play on it, we're going to give you something unexpected. And again, I think watching it as I did in 2021, Drew Barrymore's not the star that she was, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that. But back in the 90s, Drew Barrymore, Friends, Courtney Cox is huge. So you do have these A-listers. You got these young, attractive up-and-comers. I'm sure Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street, definitely got a few eyeballs on it. So you do have all of these bits of, hot talent, an established horror director, just kind of a fun meta approach. And I'm sure like the opening kill definitely probably got people in the door afterwards, after it opened and people were talking about the movie. It probably had these massive legs. Well, I mean, it made almost 200 million, which back then is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So just that right combination of it was the genre was dead, and then all you need is one project to bring it back. And I mean, slashers. You look at the late '90s, and like there's like 20 slashers in 1997, a year after, including Scream 2. So it brought it back in a big way.
Yeah, Ramona, do you have anything else on that?
No, not really. I think Duke covered it pretty well. I mean, I think when you do the same thing over and over and you're getting the same movie just with, slightly different model with a different cast, it gets boring. But I think Scream was able to show that you can still follow the genre beats while introducing something original at the same time. I mean, the fact that it inspired, I mean, look at what it inspired. Like he said, it was like 20 slashers the next year. Like it inspired a whole new wave of slashers. Some were really good and some were terrible. But I mean, even now, you can see a lot of horror movies coming out now. You can still see that inspiration and that influence from Scream. Even in, I mean, God, they're still making Scream movies now. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's definitely up there. Among the greatest slasher films of all time, and it's kind of cool that it rejuvenated the genre to where we're actually getting some. I don't even want to say elevated horror because I don't consider Scream elevated horror, but to sum it up, it was more. I wonder where horror would be right now if Scream had never been made. In 96
Interesting.
Scream,
Yeah.
like you said, the genre was kind of dead at that point. Everything had been done. Nothing new was coming out that was interesting or original. Say Scream just didn't get made. Say Kevin Williamson never wrote it. Like, where would we be now with the genre? Makes me wonder. But I don't know. I think that it's definitely in the top, at the top 5, at least, of slasher films of all time. And I think it's done a lot for the genre, both slasher and non-slasher horror. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's a classic for sure.
Sort of like outside of the slasher stuff, just I guess the slasher genre was kind of dead, but then the horror genre at large within the early to mid 90s was more so there was like this shift towards sort of like making like big, more blockbustery, sort of broad appeal kinds of horror movies. Like you had the Coppola Dracula movie, you had Interview with the Vampire, where it was like they technically were horror movies, but they weren't as like, low budget and edgy as things were in like the 70s and 80s. And this, again, sort of like shifted, sort of like what you're saying, like where would the genre be now? And it shifted us away from just focusing on like, okay, we're just going to make like big budget friendly horror movies and that's it for the rest of time. And this like brought it back to like its roots.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. That's what makes it so good. Because it's not only that, but it was a commercial success, but I mean, it was a critical success too. It did everything right to me. So
yeah, while still, adhering to and respecting the sort of like rules of the genre. So
yeah.
It's really amazing. It's really like a remarkable movie. It's great that it's in the canon. It kind of has to be. Before we've sort of talked about them. We've talked about the sequels and like the franchise as a whole. I guess we just sort of like gave the reasoning for why this movie is essential. So let's move on before we do recommendations. Why don't you guys both give me just sort of like your general thoughts on the rest of the franchise as a whole? Duke's been waiting for this.
Yeah, I know. I'll make mine quick. I think the franchise, even its quote unquote worst movie, is still a lot of fun.
Which one's that?
The worst one, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think 6 is probably my least favorite.
Really?
I had a lot of recency bias when it came out.
Ditto.
Loved it. And I think the more it settles with me and I think about it, it's probably my least favorite. But I think because of the ghost face reveals, I think we're just not for me.
Those are a bit.
The motivation felt very, and I know that they were redoing kind of Scream 2, so I get it. But this franchise, Scream is Sidney Prescott, and Scream is Gail Weathers to me. Like, they're my two final girls. And I get where they were trying to go with Scream 5 and then Scream 6. I understand it. They're trying something new, and because of certain circumstances now, they're going back to Sydney, which I think is the right move. But I think that at least 1, 2, and 3 were really solid. Like, I think that it could have stayed a trilogy and would have been perfect. 4 is a lot of fun. I've got new respect for 4. The more that I see it, I actually really love it. It probably has my second favorite ghost face, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
No spoilers.
And then, I mean, no spoilers, but 5 and 6 were fine. They were fun. It's, Scream is kind of that franchise I go, me and my sister bond over a lot because we saw the first one together so long ago, and we still, we go see the new ones when they come out in the theaters. And it's, so the franchise as a whole means a lot to me. And like I said, even my least favorite Scream movie, I still really enjoy it and I'm entertained by. And I can't say that about a lot of sequels and franchises anymore. So I don't know. I think that they're doing right by it, and I'm really excited to see kind of where they go with the new one.
And Kevin Williamson is going to direct it.
Yeah, he's
not writing it, but just directing, which is kind of interesting. So
we'll see how that goes. But I'm glad that he's involved again, and I'm glad that Neve Campbell's coming back. And I know that this podcast is not coming out obviously today, but today is actually Neve Campbell's 51st birthday, so that's kind of fun.
Wow, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Sydney.
I think it's Tommy Wiseau's birthday too. I saw something.
Oh, wow.
So
I mean, there you go.
We're fully giving it away when we're recording.
Yeah.
Isn't it Mean Girls Day too?
I think it is, yes. That's what the meme was. It was like, forget Mean Girls Day, it's Tommy Wiseau's birthday. And I was like, Mean Girls Day? What? But yeah, it's October 3rd, yeah. I agree with Ramona. The trilogy is, 3 was the weakest at the time. It does get almost too meta, and like I'm never a fan of when like they have an actor, as they do in 3, Carrie Fisher, playing not Carrie Fisher, but then they talk about how she looks like Carrie Fisher. I'm never a fan. I'm never a fan of that meta.
Oh, really?
Like they do
I love that in Ocean's 12.
That's my Ocean's 12, when they talk about that in Ocean's 12, I'm like, this is the stupidest movie I've ever seen in my life when they do that.
I love
it. I love it.
I cannot get behind it. It's so dumb. Because then it's like, oh, so she exists, and then they're never been a fan. Especially when it's like it's kind of played for last, but like Ocean's 11 more plays it kind of like it's like a thing in the
there's a hilarious point in Ocean's 12 where they're talking about it. They're like, yeah, you kind of look like Julie Roberts. And then one person goes, like, really? I don't see it.
Matt Damon, I think, is like, I don't see it. Yeah.
Like,
it's
that's hilarious.
No. Agree to disagree.
So he doesn't like meta and he doesn't like wigs. Okay.
I like meta. I don't like that meta where it's like
that meta. You don't want to go too
Carrie
far.
Fisher? No, that bitch, who got Star Wars, slept with George Lucas, and I was like, kind of funny.
That's funny.
No.
God.
Scream 4 also really good. I'll just interject there that's the only film Sailor thinks Gail Weathers could have been Ghostface and should have. To like her popularity had, as he frames it, as like her popularity diminished, so she does she reenacts the Ghostface killings to kind of revitalize her career. And once he says it, I'm like, oh man, that would have been good. Because after that, you can't really do that just the way her character develops.
Yeah.
Scream, that's kind of I like that. Scream 6 again, recency bias. I don't agree. Yeah, the Ghostface, but Scream 6 does give us that great like opening scene, ending where it's like, where what's his face? The guy who plays Flash Thompson in the new Spider-Man's, Tony.
Yeah.
He's like, wait. So, he
Tony
says something
Ravioli.
He's like, wait. I like scary movies too. And then the Ghostface goes, who gives a fuck about scary movies? And then he goes, Scream.
Scream. This is really stupid, but that's Dermot Mulrooney did that kill because spoilers.
Raph,
close your ears. But he was at Horror Hound when I went, and I got a picture with him, and he signed my picture who gives a fuck about the movies, about movies. So that was really
Oh,
awesome.
is that what he says? Who gives a fuck about movies?
Yeah, who gives a fuck about movies?
Oh, that was who gives a fuck about scary movies. Oh,
yeah, he
no,
said,
who gives a fuck about movies? It's great line.
Yeah, who gives a fuck about movies? And he signed my picture with that, and I love it. So
that's great.
That is what that opening though is one of my
like
favorite.
that Samara Weaving's little cameo.
Samara Weaving, God, I love her.
She's
her.
Great.
I loved the reveal there because you're like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, you're like,
oh
my god, they revealed who Ghostface.
Oh my god, like everyone,
which would have been a better twist than the twist at the end.
Yeah, because we went on opening night for that, and the gasps in the theater when they revealed it right away, and you're like, what the fuck?
I don't even remember their like the people at the end's motivation, but like.
I don't want to say it because Raph hasn't seen it yet, but yeah,
like the motivation of like Ghostface, like Tony Ravioli's little thing, like
that was fun though.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah,
but yeah, I've never seen the TV series. I don't think I ever will.
Me either. No, I don't.
It's not like I was saying last week where Bates
Motel. There's a TV series.
Yeah,
there was.
They didn't get the rights to use the mask, so it's like their own mask. It's not like a remake of the original. It's like kind of like a. I haven't watched it. It was on MTV though, so
Yeah, I didn't
that
watch
based
it.
on the quality of that.
But no shade to MTV, but
right.
No, but yeah, no, great franchise. I think just like any horror franchise, it has its highs, it has its lows. But overall, I think if we're talking like judging every installment, everything, again, I'm ignoring the TV series. Scream definitely has, I think, the best batting average for a slasher franchise. Like its highs outweigh the lows, and there's few lows.
Yeah, I feel like based on like the premise and like all the self-referential stuff with the movie, it has like a really high floor.
Oh yeah,
and I don't know if the ceiling is as high as something like Halloween or something, but the floor is way higher than most franchises within the slasher genre, I would think.
Yeah, because unlike like Halloween, it keeps going back to Jamie and the Shape, where Scream, you have Ghostface, but then it's also the meta aspect is what kind of keeps it alive, and
it's like really easy to like keep changing or like think of like new inventive ways to have someone be Ghostface, where Halloween or whatever, or like Nightmare on Elm Street, the ceilings might be higher, but the floor is also way lower. So like there's potential to make, crap within those franchises.
Scream is a scream. What can I tell you?
There it is.
There's the sound bite.
There it is. Amazing.
Right.
I love it.
I'm ready for these recs.
Yeah, let's do some recommendations for Scream. You guys know the drill. For everything that we introduce into the canon, we'll recommend 3 things each to check out. For folks who like said movie that's being inducted into the canon, we'll say, of those 3 recommendations, at least one has to be another movie. The other 2 can be any and everything else: music, books, video games, TV shows, whatever your little heart's desire. We like to get really fun and creative. The connections can be as loose or as on the nose as we like to said movie, and any movies that we recommend can't be other movies within the canon. So we can't recommend any of those 6 movies that I referenced as being referenced within Scream. For the order, I think we can go Duke, Romona, Raph, and Duke, you'll give us your first recommendation, why you're recommending it, what the connection is, and all of that good stuff.
All right. I'm going to go with my favorite slasher movie as my first recommendation. That will be Happy Death Day. It's also got time loop, and I'm a big time travel guy, so it's kind of a twofer. Nice. Got a killer in a mask. It's got lots of suspects. It's got I gotta do a quick Google of her name because she's one of my favorite. Jessica Roth as the final girl / the girl who keeps dying and having to figure out who her killer is in this time loop. Great actress. Yeah, just fun. Like a Groundhog Day, but but Bill Murray is getting stalked by a masked killer instead of him just killing himself with a groundhog. So happy Death Day. There's also a sequel that's not too bad either. So yeah,
amazing.
Nice.
That's awesome. I have not seen it, guys.
Awesome.
The Mets just hit a go-ahead home run in the top of the 9th inning.
Oh,
I'm
shit.
losing my shit.
Yeah, I know what that means.
Oh, shit.
Oh my god.
What's
So
that?
they just so they have to
the
they
heck's
got to
a
go into the
go
bottom of the
ahead?
9th, right?
They got to go in
That
the
means
bottom of
they're
the 9th
ahead.
and get
I see.
and then get
go.
3.
Oh, when they went ahead, I got you now.
Yeah.
They went ahead.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
I got
They're
you
leading the game now, so now they have to just get
No, let's get a couple more runs in. Just nail this thing down.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Holy.
Are you doing okay?
Holy shit. No, I'm freaking out right now.
The
But
fact that you didn't start yelling is really impressive to me because I would have been all over that. Like,
I'm also watching on like a really crappy stream on my computer, so it
oh
was like
no.
it was like freezing as the home run was being hit, and I was like, I think that's a home run, but I can't fully tell.
Oh damn. Gotta love these closers, man. They
Yeah.
really fuck up sometimes.
Oh boy.
Deep breaths.
Deep breaths. Okay, so Ramona, we can jump back in with you giving your
Okay.
first recommendation.
My first recommendation. I'll try to get this done before they go to the bottom. I'm gonna go with another meta slasher flick that was also, I don't know if he directed it. I think he did. Wes Craven. New Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nice.
I don't know which one it was, but this is where the reality and fantasy again. Heather Langenkamp comes back, but instead of playing Nancy Thompson, she's playing herself, and Robert Englund playing himself. And as she is considering making another movie with Wes Craven, her son, not her real son obviously, but her movie son, falls under the spell of Freddy Krueger, and she has to confront Freddy's demonic spirit to save the soul of her son. And it is incredibly meta, and I think that Wes Craven was perfect to do this. It's almost, it could almost be silly and like ridiculous, but it's not. It's really entertaining. I've never been a huge fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but this one is a lot of fun. I think the Freddy in New Nightmare is a lot scarier than he is in the other movies where he's just Freddy Krueger, because I think he plays it a little silly, like more comedic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with New Nightmare because I think that Wes Craven, meta, and slasher really go well together.
It's a good recipe. You know you're going to get something good when you're mixing those ingredients. I love it. Okay, for my first recommendation, I'm going to swerve so far away from where it is that both of you guys went with your first recommendations. I'm not recommending a movie for this first one. What I'm going to recommend is related to Drew Barrymore, who's, like we said, great in the opening scene. Mm-hmm. She, at one point, dated the drummer for The Strokes, who are my favorite band.
Okay.
So
nice.
I'm going to recommend their first album, Is This It? Because it's one of, if not my favorite album of all time.
That's actually a really good recommendation, like the way you tied it in there. Good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Very different from, you guys are recommending more, spooky movies, which totally makes sense. And I found an excuse to recommend an album that I really enjoy.
That's good. I like it. At least I've never actually heard the album, but I have heard some of the Strokes, and I like that. So,
all right,
yeah,
my turn again, I guess. My second pick, it's going to be another movie. We're going, so after Scream came a huge success. Kevin Williamson wrote both Scream 2, but also another slasher called I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is based on a book. But I'm recommending the movie. It's got Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, I think Michael Philippi or whatever his name is.
Ryan Philippi.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Or Michael Philippi.
I don't know.
Philippi.
as I say, you read these actors' names, but you never hear them out loud, really. So I just do the best. Basically, it's all in the title. These 4 teenagers, they kind of murder someone accidentally. They kind of cover it up, and then next summer they start getting letters, or they get stalked by the supposed killer. Well, maybe it is. I'm not going to tell you. Watch the movie. So yeah, I Know What You Did Last Summer is my second recommendation. It's fun. There's also a couple sequels. They're going to make a legacy sequel. Gonna film it, I think, before the end of the year. Freddie Prinze is back, so boom.
And it has one of the best chase scenes with Sarah Michelle Gellar in there.
Oh man, it's been a couple years.
I've actually never seen it.
Oh, it's good though. It's good. You can skip the direct to video.
It's
prequel.
Super cheesy, but it's as a slasher flick coming out after Scream. It's pretty solid.
It is solid. It's also the only good one in the series, I would say.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out.
It's worth it.
Yeah, good recommendation. I like it. I like where you're leading us down a good path, Duke.
Oh, thank you.
Ramona, keep us on that good path.
I'm gonna try. I'm actually going to recommend a book that I have read. And it is called Clown in a Cornfield.
Okay, good.
By Adam, I think it's Cesar. And it's actually, there's 3 books out now, but I've just now got the third one to read. But basically, this is about a teenager named Quinn who moves to a Midwestern town in Iowa called Kettle Springs. And this is a town that's kind of fading away, lost a lot of work, kind of poor. And so the adults in this town are trying to make Kettle Springs great again. And on the other side are the kids and teenagers who want to just have fun. They make prank videos. They're general pains in the asses. So when Quinn moves there, Kettle Springs is, quote, caught in a battle between old and new, tradition and progress. It's a fight that looks like it will destroy the town until Friendo, the Bay Pen mascot, a creepy clown in a pork pie hat, goes homicidal and decides that the only way for Kettle Springs to grow back is to cull the rotten crop of kids who live there. So this is a very slow burn slasher novel. But the last, I'd say the last third of the book, when the clown shows up, is a lot of fun, super gory. And it has a final girl. So this is a pretty fun, easy to read book. If you like slasher novels.
Nice. I don't think I've ever actually read a slasher novel. I feel like that's like the next step for me in, my horror fandom.
I think writing a slasher novel is difficult because it's really hard to, I think, to convey horror in that kind of sense in writing, I guess. But I've read quite a few slasher I don't want to say flicks, novels lately that have been super graphic and gory, so I guess it can be done. But Clown in a Cornfield, it's silly, but it's it's a lot of fun. And I actually think that I don't know if they're making a TV series out of it or a movie, but I saw it on IMDb earlier, so it could be coming soon, so we'll see.
Nice. I also feel like if you're someone like me who gets scared easily, and if I'm reading something scary, I can just like close the book.
Close the book.
Yeah.
Put it in the freezer.
Put it away.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that though.
Yeah.
For my second recommendation, I'm also going to go with a book. And
Yay.
This is another kind of, weird sort of workaround path to get to the connection. And we probably didn't talk about her enough, but the Gale Weathers character is so great. And, part of her storyline is she writes the book about the murder trial of Sydney's mom and gets super famous off of it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that, especially 1996, is inspired from the trial of the century, the O.J. Simpson trial. And if you guys have not read Jeffrey Toobin's book about that trial, The Run of His Life, I would highly recommend checking it out because it is really, really, really well written, super interesting, very well reported, and probably like the definitive book about that trial. So that's my second recommendation.
Nice.
The Run of His Life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. I've always wanted to read something, but there's so many books on OJ.
That's like, if you just want the one about the trial, this is
Yeah.
like the go-to one.
Excellent. Okay, I'm gonna have to remember that. That whole thing, that whole trial made me so angry, but I've always wanted to kind of read it. It happened when I was so young, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good recommendation. I like the tie-in there. I really wish they had made that a book though, the Woodsboro murders.
That would have been a really cool tie-in
Yeah, like
to actually like
I know
write
the
that. Yeah.
yeah, because I know the first book she wrote about Cotton and like the murder trial there,
Mhm.
and then the second movie she had written about the Woodsboro murders. I was like, come on, make these books. I want to read them.
Yeah.
I want a Stab movie. That's what I want. Oh, that's a sequel.
Yes.
Oh, nice. Good
Oh,
reference.
that would be fun. Yeah.
Okay, my third and final is a book. I'm glad if Ramon, if you would have picked the same book, I would have been shocked. But when you're like, I got a book, I was like, oh no. It's a book I just actually finished reading earlier, I guess last month. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. I believe he's an Australian writer. At least the book is set in Australia. Basically, yeah, he's kind of divided into chapters, and not chapters, but sections, and then there's chapters. But each section, it's kind of like my father, my mother, so on, my cousin, blah blah blah. And each section, at some point, he'll reveal like, who that member of the family killed and stuff. But there is like
What?
but overall, that it's like this murder mystery set at a ski lodge, which always throws me when it's set in Australia, because I don't like necessarily think of snow when I think of
Yeah, I don't
Australia. So
either.
they're always talking about like
Desert skiing.
every once in a while they'll like mention Australia, and I'll be like, oh yeah, this is set in Australia. That's right. But yeah, it's just a fun book. It also has like 2 sequels, but I'm not going to read them because it's just like the main character after that, and he gets caught up, kind of like Hercule Poirot, kind of its own new setting, new cast of characters, and I'm kind of in it with the family. The family is the interesting part, so definitely recommend this first book. Originally, it was going to be like a 3 out of 5 when I was like halfway done, but just like Scream, there's a good twist near the end that I just got me right on board for the rest of the book. So yeah,
Nice.
everyone in my family has killed someone.
Nice.
Everyone in my family is close.
A
I
lot of
like
good-
the book recommendations.
Yeah, a lot of good book recommendations on this episode,
Yeah,
which I wasn't totally
I like
expecting,
that.
but that's awesome.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's awesome.
Okay, so
Okay.
for my no, sorry, it's Ramona. Oh my
No,
god.
no. Is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
it is
I know
Ramona.
you're.
It is Ramona.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay,
We're all out of whack. Too many good books,
well-
and now we've lost our way.
okay. I closed my email. Oh, there it is. Okay. So, and I don't know why I even need to read this. I already know. And I am going to recommend a film, and I'm going to recommend the sequel to the movie we had just talked about. I am going to recommend Scream 2.
Nice.
Because my opinion is Scream is kind of the ultimate meta film on slasher flicks. So if you see Scream, I feel like you have to watch Scream 2 because it is the ultimate meta film on sequels. So
Mhm.
plus it introduces us to the film within a film with the Stab
Mhm.
franchise, which is also mentioned, I think, several times throughout the rest of the Scream franchise, and is the motivation for
Whoa,
a
spoilers.
ghost face later
Yeah.
on. I'm not
Okay,
saying
I'm just,
nothing.
I just want to make sure. you already spoiled one major kill.
I know, I'm sorry. But I think it also has, while not my favorite Ghostface, it also has one of, I think, the best Ghostface reveals, with some great motivation tied into the first movie.
I agree.
So I'm definitely, plus I think we get to see a lot more development, not only in Sydney's character, but Dewey and Gail as well, to kind of start threading them together to be that trio. So I think that if you watch Scream, you can't just stop there. You have to, even if you don't watch any of the others, you have to watch Scream 2.
I love that recommendation. Isn't
Yeah.
noted hunk Timothy Olyphant in that movie?
He
is.
is
He's so
in that
And
movie.
Sarah Michelle
And I
Gellar.
love
Yes.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah,
And
she's
she
great.
was in,
Yep.
she did
I
a
mean, the Oliphants.
1-2 punch of I Know What You Did Last Summer
Yes.
and then Scream 2 in the same year.
And
Yep, Sarah Michelle
And I
Gellar.
think Buffy premiered that year too, wasn't it? 97?
Buffy was
94, 5, 6?
94, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because she was already doing Buffy, I think,
I
before
see.
Scream 2.
the opening kill in Scream 2 is also awesome. And Scream 2,
Painful.
very painful.
I did not
Jada
remember
is
that.
amazing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
this
good.
one brings into the conversation like race in slasher movies, which is like notedly absent within the first one, but it is interesting that they bring it in to the second one because also like if you look at the genre, that's kind of like where Black people start showing up is within sequels. So very
and you know, it really is great because the Gale's camera guy is a black guy, and he's the first one. And when the killing started, he's like, "I'm out of here," and he's gone. Like he knows. He's like, "I'm not going to survive this." It's so good. So they really do keep up that that self-referential thing going on in the second movie, almost taking it a step further with that film within a film and everything. And it's really well done. I loved it. Great cast.
Yeah. Amazing. I love it.
So are you happy right now? Are you ecstatic?
For my third recommendation, I know it's supposed to be a movie, but we already gave away the day that we're recording this. And as we are wrapping up recommendations, the Mets just won their playoff series. Or their first playoff series in
anything could happen.
Extremely dramatic fashion. So my bonus recommendation is the New York motherfucking Mets. But my actual third recommendation is a movie. I wasn't quite sure which way I wanted to go. I had two movies written down, but I think what I'm going to go with is another movie that is very much so a meta commentary of a genre, but also very much so working within said genre. I'm going to recommend Deadpool, the first Deadpool movie, because as annoying as I find the whole Ryan Reynolds shtick, and I was not someone who was in on Deadpool 3. I think the first one is able to accomplish in many ways what this first Scream movie is able to accomplish. So that's my final recommendation. And also, let's go Mets.
It's a great recommendation.
Deadpool is a good one.
Deadpool is really, that's a good one to recommend for this whole meta. I never saw the second Deadpool. I saw the first one and I saw the new one that just came out. Yeah, so, but they're enjoyable. I can see how the Ryan Reynolds shtick could get old after a while, though.
Well, he plays himself in every movie.
Yeah, he does. I like him in some things, yeah. So, but yay, go Mets. I have no dog in that fight anymore. So, not that I ever did. The Reds are never going to the playoffs. So,
all right,
never mind.
Amazing. Those are the recommendations. Do we want to quickly spin through them one more time?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
let's do it. Same order. Duke, what you got?
I have two slasher movies. Happy Death Day. It's got a time loop in it as well. Then I got I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was written by Scream creator Kevin Williamson, or adapted, I should say. And then my third and final pick is the novel Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by author Benjamin Stevenson.
My picks are Wes Craven's New Nightmare and Scream 2. And then I also chose A Book, Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar.
Amazing. I've got the Strokes album, Is This It? Of course. I've got the book about the O.J. Simpson trial, the run of his life, and the film Deadpool. Duke, excellent. Ramona, thank you guys for joining. This has been
fun.
So much fun. Great conversation, great movie. Very happy that we have Scream within the canon now. As listeners, you know, it's October, and we've mentioned before that we, at Screen Age Wasteland we like to celebrate the season There's a ton of great stuff. Duke, do you want to give us like a heads up or a rundown
I'll
some
do
of the things that
little.
people can expect?
That's right. Screen Age Wasteland is now Scream Age Wasteland. Horror
Nice.
content. Except for one day in the middle of October, we have a new entry of a list dropping every day. Sailor went a bit crazy. Or we all go a little mad sometimes.
Nice.
That's a little throwback to the Psycho episode last week. He's doing 500 greatest horror movie characters. By the time you're listening to this, it should be halfway done. So, he's got wild cards, he's got obscure, he's got the fan favorites. It's every day at 8 a.m. EST time, there will be a new list entry. Then he's gonna do just 100 overlooked horror movies that won't be ranked. It's just 100 movies he's gonna run down that you should see that deserves a little love. We got questions of the day dropping twice a week. Horror themed. We're gonna do one choice where we do 4 movies, 4 characters, something like that. Pick one. The other 3, don't exist anymore. Just some fun discussion stuff like that. Bob's got reviews. Ramona's gonna have rom-com reviews, unless she's gonna do
spooky rom-coms.
I'm not sure what she's up to. I know Raph here, he's got a few we got a few movies I think he's going to review that are horror themed. Lots of stuff every day. Check out check the site once a day at 8:01 a.m. and EST and there will be something new that you did not see whenever you checked yesterday. So yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, Ramona, do you actually have any spooky rom-coms that you're going to be doing for Rom-Com Rewind?
I am hoping to. So you'll have to wait until Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST and find out. Or is it 3 p.m. EST? I can never figure it out. I don't know. Check it out on Tuesday. But I'm hoping to. I'm really in the spooky spirit. So spooky and romance is right up my alley. So I'm hoping to get some out there.
Amazing. Can't wait. Yeah. Can't wait for all the lists. Can't wait for the reviews. Got a ton of good stuff. We've got more spooky movies coming up on the Canon. We're doing back-to-back Bob weeks. How about that for all the Bob fans out there? So Bob will be joining us
Bob every week.
Pretty much. I mean, this is his month. This is Bob's month.
Yeah.
This is his time to shine. So
Bobtober.
Bobtober on the Canon. That'd be great.
Yep.
That's amazing. So yeah, we'll be celebrating Bobtober next week and the week after with The Evil Dead and then Bride of Frankenstein. So
fun.
All the Bob stands, all the Evil Dead stands, all the Bride of Frankenstein stands. Definitely join us there. Those are going to be fun episodes. Really looking forward to it. We'll see you there. And as always, in the meantime, we'll see you in the Wasteland or the Screamland or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.